Welcome back to Hardball. The Southern Poverty Law Center has identified the Family Research Council as one of its hate groups. The FRC, needless to say, does not appreciate it. Both are with me now. Tony Perkins is president of the Family Research Council. Mark Potok is the Intelligence Project Director for the Southern Poverty Law Center. Mr. Potok, make your case.
Well, let me say for starters that when we name groups hate groups, that has nothing to do with any allegation of criminality or some kind of measure of expected violence. It's purely about ideology. Do groups demonize entire groups of people with falsehoods and other kinds of demonizing propaganda, conspiracy theories, and so on? The Family Research Council, among many other things, has associated falsely gay men with pedophilia. They have suggested that homosexual men molest children at rates that far outdistance those of heterosexuals, and that's simply a falsehood and a known falsehood. On your show, Chris, a representative of the council, Peter Sprigg, came on and said something that, frankly, would have been sufficient for us to list them as a hate group all by itself. That homosexual
let's show that right now. It was Peter Sprigg.
Quote, unquote,
right, as you're right to say that, the senior fellow for the policy, the Family Research Council, was on Hardball on February 2nd of this year. His name's Peter Sprigg. He's senior fellow to the FRC. Let's listen to what he said. Do you think we should outlaw gay behavior?
Well, I think certainly
I'm just
defensible.
asking you, should we outlaw gay behavior?
I think that the Supreme Court decision in Lawrence v. Texas, which overturned the sodomy laws in this country, was wrongly decided. I think there would be a place for criminal sanctions against homosexual behavior.
So we should outlaw gay behavior?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter Sprigg. We know your position. It's a clear one. Is that your position, Mr. Perkins, that we should outlaw gay behavior? Is that your group's position? Outlaw it.
We have not been, nor are we, nor will we be working to recriminalize homosexual behavior. His point in that interview was that in 2003 we were opposed to the overturning of the sodomy laws in the Lawrence v. Texas case, and for a reason. We think to be silent when it comes to homosexual behavior that's both harmful to society and, more importantly, to the individuals who engage in it, to be silent, that is in fact hateful.
But he said we should outlaw it. Is that your position?
No,
just to get that straight, should we outlaw it? He said, so he doesn't speak for your group. He doesn't speak for your group.
Look, Chris, I just said we have not been, we are not, and we are not going to be working to recriminalize homosexual behavior. That's not the issue today. What's at issue here is an attempt to take our public policies and enshrine homosexual behavior as some protected class, redefining marriage. And, of course, voters in 31 states have rejected that idea. So that's what we're working on. We have never put forth a policy that would recriminalize homosexual behavior.
Let me go back to you, Mark. I want Mark to respond to this issue, because now we're having the president of the Family Research Council saying that the position that was taken here by Peter Sprigg, which said we should outlaw gay behavior, is not his position, not the position of his organization. Does that exempt him from your classification as a hate group, that action today, just now?
No, I think it's ridiculous, and I say that for this reason. Peter Sprigg went on your air, just as I am doing, as a representative of his organization. The Family Research Council made no sound about this. There was nothing remotely approaching a repudiation or even a clarifying statement about the statements that were made. I mean, look, the Family Research Council has done things. A few years ago, they put out a pamphlet called Homosexual Behavior and Pedophilia, in which they said that a part of the so-called homosexual agenda was to destroy, to get rid of all age of consent laws having to do with sexual behavior. And then the Family Research Council went on to say that, in fact, homosexual activists, in their words, were working to make pedophiles the kind of apostles, the prophets of a new sexual order. Those are simply falsehoods. Those are simply lies.
Was that true? Let me stand by that or not?
Let me go back to the first issue that Mark brings up about the connection between homosexual men and pedophilia. If you go back to the archives of sexual behavior, a peer-reviewed journal that stated that in self-identified, 86% of men homosexual men who engage, or men who engaged in molestation of children, 86% of them identified as homosexual or bisexual. That study has not been refuted. And that is in part what's based upon, that statement was based upon. If you look at the American College of Pediatricians, they say the research is overwhelming that homosexuality poses a risk to children. So Mark is wrong. He needs to go back and do his own research, because this evidence is out there. And what we're saying is, this is not beyond debate. And this is what's troubling here, Chris,
right. Yeah,
is that the left is losing ground in this public policy debate. And so they start this juvenile process of name-calling and trying to shut down debate over public policy.
Okay,
That's
stop for a second, because you've just made an argument of fact here. You've said the public is turning against this, whatever. The latest poll numbers we've got from CNN and all kinds of reputable polls is that the country's turning more and more toward accepting of open service by gay people in the U.S. military. So it isn't as simple as you put. I know the country moved right in the last election, but when it comes to open service, this country's overwhelmingly moving toward acceptance of open service. Are they not?
But if you look at the men and women who actually serve, which is only about 12% of the population that's been serving in the military, it's almost inverse. In a poll that will be coming out tomorrow, 63% of those who serve or are currently serving or have served are opposed to overturning this policy, because they're the ones that have to live by it. But if you look at what's happened in this last election, the American public has rejected this radical push for social policy when the administration said it was going to be focused on jobs. And
I think they rejected a 9.5% unemployment rate. That's my view.
That's right.
Tony, you're always welcome here. Tony, you're always welcome. Now go back and spank Peter Sprigg for saying the wrong thing on this show, because he said the opposite of what you said.
We don't do that either.
You don't spank. Okay, well, maybe you should, at least verbally. Thank you so much, Mark Potok, for coming on the program on a very hot issue.